there, I am Tone. I'm the founder and CEO of Culture Intelligence, and this is a global CultureCast, actually our first. Our ambition is to talk with key culture intelligent leaders and stakeholders in society right now to increase insight and applicability in culture leadership. So today the focus is Silicon Valley, and Silicon Valley for me is a dream, as for many, and intensely for me because it's known for its paid-forward culture, it's a bonanza for startups, and a center for gravity for learning and growth. And I actually fell in love with it during my exchange year in high school, and I later actually founded Culturengine, as the name was then, there, with my co-founder Per. And I have sat in the cafeteria in Stanford Campus for a week just soaking in the atmosphere. And I have visited Nordic House and met with Gro and Åse. And I have been in board meetings with Silicon Vikings. And I came actually very close to move over and stay. And my guest today did exactly that. He stayed. And he has made it into Stanford Research Institute. He did live in Palo Alto. He has worked as an adjunct professor at 3 different Silicon Valley colleges and universities. And he now owns the tagline that if you are through learning, you are through. So it's a great pleasure, Eilif, to have you here with us today. Welcome to us. You are now PhD in Learning, Innovation, and Virtual Technology, Director of Emeritus, Silicon Vikings, and Strategic Business Insights. All of that, and welcome dearly to us here today, Eilif.
Tusen takk, Tone. Det veldig hyggelig å bli invitert til podcasten din.
Nettopp.
Jeg har naturligvis hørt på de fleste av dine 30 pluss episoder som du har gjort, og jeg må si jeg veldig imponert over kvaliteten av det du gjør.
Takk.
Jeg bare håper nå at ikke min deltagelse drar kvaliteten nedover.
Nei, det gjør ikke det.
Men heldigvis har vi bestemt å gjøre dette på engelsk, slik at våre amerikanske venner i Silicon Valley, som kanskje vil høre på podcasten en eller annen dag, vil forstå hva vi sier.
Ja.
Men denne lille introduksjonen på norsk var bare for å bevise til mine norske venner at jeg, som hører på, at jeg fremdeles ikke har glemt morspråket mitt helt, selv etter 55 år her borte.
Wow.
Men nå fokus på Silicon Valley culture and in English.
All right, we'll go there. So that was amazing. Thank you so much. And it proves that you are a true Norwegian, even if you have lived abroad for 55 years. So let's start with your journey. It's a pretty exciting one. And I just got snapshots from it, obviously. So why don't you start with the executive summary of how you ended up in Silicon Valley and at the Stanford Research Institute?
Okay. Well, I'll try to be short. I left in 1966 after, on a Fred Olsen cargo ship, leaving Oslo and arrived in San Francisco. I left after finishing Lillestrøm Gymnas, and I thought I would improve my English and maybe earn a little bit of money before attending the University of Oslo. But of course, once I got to Silicon Valley, things changed quickly. I started playing soccer and studying economics at the college in San Mateo in the middle of Silicon Valley. And after 4 weeks only, I met a Cuban girl and whom I married 5 years later and still married to
Wow.
today. So, you know, it's been an interesting journey. And I for a number of years, you know, I ended up collecting academic degrees. And I got a PhD in economics in 1979, and then was offered a job as SRI International formerly known as Stanford Research Institute. And I was thrilled to get the job at a world-class research institute, but also because it was located in Silicon Valley. So I ended up getting a front row seat to the most fascinating and interesting startup economic ecosystem in the world. So
Yeah. Lucky
that's
Lucky
briefly
you.
what happened.
Yeah, that's great. I am just so envious on that journey because I think there's so much that you can experience over there, and as you can tell, I'm really fascinated by it still, even if all the political mess and all that in the States. But let's leave that behind. Let's go to the Silicon Valley culture, Eilif, because to me, that Silicon Valley innovation ecosystem puzzle, can you help me understand it a little bit better? What is it really?
How much time you got to? Because a lot of people talk about Silicon
I
Valley,
know.
and actually there is a lot of misconceptions around the world as to what Silicon Valley is. So if you allow me, I'll take a few minutes to go into it a little bit because I think it is important. First of all, we like to say that it's really not a place. It's a state of mind, frame of mind, and it's really not about technology so much. It's about building companies and scaling companies to size, and it's a very complex and dynamic ecosystem, and it consists of many moving parts that interact. It's like a melting pot, and I have given a lot of presentations around the world about Silicon Valley, and I will explain it in referring to two graphics that I've used in my presentations that I think they overlay each other and are important parts of telling the story.
Okay.
One of those graphs shows that Silicon Valley has happened over time. A colleague of mine at SRI, he was a regional economist, Doug Henton, developed this one graph that shows 5 cycles of Silicon Valley, starting with the defense industry. Around World War II and after World War, so defense industry was very important to Silicon Valley. That's really what gave it the foundation. Money was pouring in from Washington, D.C., from Pentagon, and so on. And then the semiconductor industry started. We had about 50 different semiconductor companies here, they created big companies, started with small ones, then became bigger ones, Intel, AMD, and now today we have NVIDIA that makes great chips for artificial intelligence and so on. Then we have the personal computer phase. That I think that's what a lot of people think about when they think about Silicon Valley. Steve Jobs and all the personal computers that came up, but even bigger computers, the mainframes from IBM and so on. And then the next phase is really the internet and social media phase that is more around software. So it's a combination of software and hardware that, of course, defines most of Silicon Valley. So that's this evolution graph.
Yeah.
And then it's all the different pieces, the elements that interplay here. And of course, you have the large companies that we all know of. You have the universities, particularly Stanford University, but also UC Berkeley across the bay, and many other universities that most people don't even know about. Then you have, of course, the venture capital up on 3000 Sandhill Road. You have all these venture companies that it's incredible the amount of money that exists in the valley in these companies. That's Silicon Valley has accounted for a third to a half of all the venture money at any given time for a long time. Then you have the startups, these small and medium-sized companies. You have research institutes, you have incubators and accelerators. So there's so many pieces, and all of this plays together to create the valley.
And I have a question regarding that, because it's to me it's starting to make sense why culture became so important, because culture, of course, is about integration. It's the glue between the parts. And is that why it sort of started to be very important how all these units work together in the ecosystem? Is that part of it? No, I'm just guessing.
Yeah, I mean, I am not a culture expert, Tone, but based on what I have observed and from the companies that I work in and the companies that I see in the Valley, it's fascinating how all of this is working. And it's changing, over time. There are some companies that are great working environments, and then things do not work all that well. But there's so many things in the Valley that are unique to the culture. It's a kind of and the networking. Most people know Silicon Valley as a networking place where people meet and share ideas, and you pitch your company, you develop stories about how you're going to build companies. So it's very open, has a very open culture, very collaborative, and risk-taking. I mean, this is core of the Valley, is risk-taking. And people are willing to listen to stories by smart entrepreneurs who wants to change the world, wants to disrupt what we now have. And a lot of people that will help you do that and help you along the way.
That's fascinating. And this is a nerd question, but I have to ask it. Do you know what they look for when they listen to entrepreneurs? What kind of criteria or do they have data, or do they just trust their guts? Or
I would say that, as far as I know, most people who fund companies, the venture guys typically don't ask for data when it comes to the culture. But I think most of these people have gone through this process so often. They have a good feeling for what makes a good team. They know how to ask the right questions to see if these people will work together well, if they had the right vision. Do they have the operating experience? Do they understand what it takes to build a big company and so on, a successful company? Are they willing to listen? So they have a bunch of different questions. They have done this for years and years and years. They have the experience. So I don't think they come to what you do, collecting data on the corporate culture so much. But hopefully one day, maybe they will start looking at that more.
This is a huge market, Eilif. So we'll have to talk about that. But if you think about that, this has created a tremendous global culture known as the Silicon Valley culture, and a lot of people are interested in, is it possible to copy that? Can we, if we understand, could we copy it and bring it to Norway, or UK or Germany for that matter? Would that be possible?
I think it is very, very difficult to copy a culture. And as I already explained about this, these phases of the Valley, that has also shaped and created the culture over 70 years. My colleague had this graph that was over 50 years. And, you know,
Yeah.
and then the last 20 years have built on the previous 5 phases, and now we're into artificial intelligence. But many of the key processes that work in the valley, they are the same.
They are the same.
And so I think that there are certain things that other areas in the world can copy. For instance, in networking.
Yeah.
To set up, I wrote a blog post one time, and I did some research and found out that there's this meetups groups that you can join, and I looked up. I was interested in software. I wondered how many specific groups that deal directly or indirectly with software. Let's say within a 25-mile radius of San Jose. And I found out there were 350 such meetups.
Okay.
Meetup, 350 with 160,000 members.
Yeah.
This shows so other regions can set up these kind of meetups, and of course they are now through accelerators and incubators in Oslo, in Stockholm, where people get together. So there's certainly elements that one can copy.
So you can copy the structure probably, but you can't really copy the culture. That's what you're telling me. But let's reflect a little bit on how cultures change, because cultures normally change a little bit, or they respond to external factors. And right now there is a huge external factor called global recession. You guys have a political war at your backyard. How does this Silicon Valley culture respond to all that?
Yeah, no, clearly, I think that businesses everywhere are going to be impacted, and they already in a very short time been a significant change, because money was basically free, and there was a lot of it not that many months ago, and that is not the case today.
Really? So
unless you are in artificial intelligence and chat GPT. I heard that the latest class of the Y Combinator, which is the biggest incubator accelerator in Silicon Valley, 50 of its companies were doing AI and chat GPT. So if you have a good story, if you can give venture guys a good story on how you can build a successful company in that area, there is no shortage of money for that. But most other companies will have struggle.
Okay, so this is the key. As my suspicion was that's the case, but it's interesting that you can confirm it, because now in Norway, of course, it's important, but there's a lot of other factors also. But probably in the valley right now, there's really a high focus on that area, of course. But tell me a little bit about that. ChatGPT, augmented reality, future of learning. What do you see? Where are we heading with this?
Well, I think everyone is now struggling to figure out where this is going. I don't know how many newsletters and how many podcasts and so on I listen to every day, where people are explaining, and many people are concerned about where this is going. Should we just let things go the way we did it with other technologies? And we saw with social media how that went off and had some very bad consequences, because there was a lot of misinformation that was spread with social media, and the way the Russians got into social media and affected our election. So things take turns that you don't expect, and people are concerned that we're going to run into the same things again. So many want to see some guardrails, some policies around this to guide the future of AI. So, but we're still figuring out how can it be used, how can it best be used, and the companies that are developing the technologies, they are still working out the kinks, to make sure that things are working out well. There've been some hilarious things that have come out.
Yeah, we have experimented
recent weeks about it.
Yeah, but what do you think it will be the best applications? Have you been?
Well, I am, I'm an optimist at heart, and I think that the technology has a potential to do a lot of good things. Now, right now, there's a panic even in the educational sector. And education and learning is close to my heart.
Yeah.
It always has been. But I've seen just within the last week or so, I've seen data on more educators being open and willing to start testing and playing with these tools and seeing how they can be used in schools and especially in higher levels, in high schools and in colleges. How can students play with these things in a way that they augment
exactly
what you are doing, and you use them as a tool to do things better?
And this is so exciting because I just read, or my brilliant colleague Peter, our CTO, told me yesterday that not only the students are using it for turning in essays, teachers are now starting to use it to correct the essays or to grade the essays. So now it's becoming a mutual beneficial thing, and the more augmented it is, of course, the more careful we'll have to be. But it's super fascinating that it can actually speed up our learning or our whatever process we are in. So we're into something that full speed ahead, and we don't really know where it's heading, do we?
Well, I think that's important. You use the word augment.
Yeah.
And a lot of people use it for augmented reality, but augmentation, human knowledge augmentation, is something that really strikes a chord here in the Valley. And let me just take a minute to mention a colleague of mine at SRI. He was one of the most incredible people I ever met. His name was Doug Engelbart. If it hadn't been for Doug, we would not have the mouse as it's a tool for, that really opened up personal computers. Steve Jobs saw what Doug had done with the mouse as an interface, with Windows, with hypertext, and so on. Doug did a demo at a conference in December 1968. He sat at SRI and demonstrated these technologies, and they have had a great impact on culture, the culture of the Valley.
Yeah.
And it's a computer scientist, Alan Kay, referred to Doug's demonstration and its importance on culture. Let me just read what he said. That he said, in one 90-minute demonstration in San Francisco, Engelbart, sitting at SRI, presenting to 1,000 engineers, he shattered the military-industrial paradigm and gave the hippies and free thinkers and radicals who were already gathering in Silicon Valley, he gave them a vision for the future that would drive technology for several decades. That's what Doug Engelbart, one person did that.
Yeah.
And it affected the culture of the whole place.
Yeah.
It opened up visions for how you could interact with technology, what you could do. People started tinkering in garages, using hardware and software, and changed the world.
I'm getting a really broad, busy time in my head right now because there's so much and it's so fascinating. And I can't help thinking how much of this is going on in the same pace in Norway, and how is that? How do you see this bridging globally from the Valley?
Yeah, this is very interesting, and I have had many debates as part of Silicon Vikings and so
Yeah.
on. We debate these things, and some people say, "Oh, Silicon Valley is now heading down," and so on. I don't
Is
know
it?
how many times I've heard that Silicon Valley is heading down, because that happens. You know, new technologies come, and Silicon Valley takes the best of the past wave and turns it into the next one. So I think the resiliency of Silicon Valley has been proven so many times. But clearly, there are smaller Silicon Valleys happening all over the world
Yeah.
that where they have great technology, talent, global talent is global.
Yeah.
You know, there's
Yeah.
great, very smart people in the Nordics,
Yeah.
but they have to, first of all, be risk takers. They have to embrace risk. That's a difficult cultural element, to be willing to take risk and put millions and millions and maybe billions of dollars at risk. That's what venture companies do here.
Mm.
But in Norway now, you have incubators, you have accelerators. I think Innovation Norway and the Nordic Innovation that have funded the Nordic Innovation House in Palo Alto,
Mm.
they've done the right things,
Yeah.
and they are supporting these things that are happening. And I think the Nordics are doing wonderful things, and many of them are coming over here. They are more, they do a much better job in than they did before when they stand in front of all these people in the valley and tell their story. You have to be a good storyteller
Mm.
and tell the story about your company and
Mm.
your vision, and have confidence, and prove that you're going to make this into a big company
Mm.
that these guys are
Yeah.
going to put mega bucks into.
But but
So
but
so that's
is there a
happening.
difference between how a Norwegian startup would do that compared to how a Silicon Valley startup would do that?
I don't think that there are that many differences between it. Uh, Things are different in scale, and of course, if you start a company here in the valley, first of all, I mentioned these networking opportunities you have.
Mm.
They're so much bigger here.
Mm.
There's so much networking going on. There's so many business organizations, law firms, and so on that open up their offices and give companies a chance to come in, and you have these networking events taking place. And then you have a lot of people who have had success before and are willing to take some of the money they have
Ah,
and invest in you.
right.
I don't know if you have as many people in Norway and in Sweden, people already made money who are now willing to take that money
Yeah.
and also use the pay forward
Right.
idea of and helping others, being mentors,
Yeah.
helping others be successful. So that's a
This
key element in this whole thing.
this is the part that's hard to, because it's truly culture involved in this, and it's hard to copy that because it involves both trust and, like you said, risk willingness and openness and sharing and all that. So all these cultural elements or values would be important to and necessary to have in order to, let's say, recreate the paid forward culture. But it would be a
Yeah.
fascinating project if we took it on, and I think we sort of have, we did try, or we came at least in a start when you and I met in Silicon Vikings way back. It's almost 10 years ago, Eilif. So and Silicon Vikings was a kind of a bridge between the valley and Norway, and had a purpose of connecting the two. And how well do you think that has gone? What have we created?
Yeah, I think that Silicon Vikings is a really interesting organization. As you know, I was on the board of Silicon Vikings for about 15 years, and I headed, and I'm proud to say, the most active special interest group,
Yeah.
and mine was focused on innovation, entrepreneurship, and learning.
Right.
And I had so many meetings that I organized. So the success of Silicon Vikings is driven by the people. As same as with companies, the success of a company is driven by the people you have. People having the knowledge, having the energy, being willing to step up and doing it. And I don't know how many hours I spent organizing events and meetings for Silicon Vikings around in different locations. And I used my location at SRI. SRI has huge, beautiful conference rooms in the middle of Silicon Valley. I invited people in and we had meetings, and so that has to happen. And so the Silicon Vikings, in some of the nodes in the Nordics, things are happening more. In other nodes, not so much is happening because they're missing the people who need to step up and take charge and make things happen. But I think there are a lot of good things that are happening, and but Christian Olsson left at about the same time as I left the Valley. I'm now here in Southern California. Christian Olsson is in North Carolina. Richard Horning moved. So there's been a change in personnel and so on.
And that impacts, of course, when key people. But if we're gonna sort of sum all this up, and let's just imagine that we are a Norwegian startup, like us, for instance. We can, if I wanted to go to the Valley, which I of course desperately want, because I'm imagining that there's a lot of money there and investors and opportunities and all that. And so how can a Norwegian startup get started and with an intent to really come over there and do it for real in the Valley? What would be your guiding input?
Well, first of all, and I have been saying this for years and years, I don't know how many delegations, how many people contact me and want to come over. And of course, a lot of it is being seen as kind of techno-tourism. I don't know how many delegations I have spoken to at SRI. They want to come and have a good time and then go back home, and you don't hear from them again. That's not the way to do it. So I advise companies to do their homework. To first of all, prepare themselves. If you are pitching, have a damn good story to tell. Practice your story, and have a good website so that when you leave the Valley, people who want to contact you will go to your website. And so many Nordic companies have terrible websites, or at least they used to, where they don't identify who are in the leadership of the company. What are their backgrounds? Have a good, funny video that shows what your company, what your vision is. There are a lot of companies that specialize in putting that together, and you can have that on your website to make it intriguing for people who are either thinking of putting money into you or learning about what you do to be a customer. Create a, knock their socks off website. Because that's your window on the world. That's a window on the world. I did a study, Tone. I looked at hundreds and hundreds of edtech companies in Nordics, and oh man, the websites really sucked big time. So that's one thing. And then when you come over here, contact with the right people. Contact the Nordic Innovation House. Ask for help. Ask them to help identify the right people you should meet with. You should have things to do every hour of every day you're here to really maximize the value of the trip for you. And
because it's pretty
and a lot of people will help you do that.
It's a pretty expensive trip to make, because I've done that several times, and gosh, the price of a house and all that is like crazy, and hotels. But do you think it's possible for Norwegian startups to really make it? Is that at all possible?
Well,
Do you have
there are
examples?
lots of things to consider. First of all, to set up legal domicile over here, so the bunch of lawyers have to get involved. You can't just come and set things up quickly. You know, it has to be, and I think this is a process where you build your bases at home, and at some point you might want to come over here. I'm working with a couple of startup companies in Norway now. I think they're doing it right. They're going very slowly. They're building up the technology. They're building up the platforms. They're getting customers in Europe first. They know that the American market is very, very competitive and it's hard to get in. So they are preparing themselves, taking the time needed for that, and to hone the story, and then be ready for whether it's the American market or the Asian market or going into other markets. I think they can have success. There have been plenty of examples of Norwegian companies. Kahoots is
Yeah,
a prime example
yeah, that's
of
true.
a Nordic edtech company that has had great success.
Yeah, that's true. They have had a bit of a roller coaster lately, but they are. I think they're back on track. So we
Well,
actually
you
work.
know, everyone has roller coasters.
I
You
know.
know, things go up and down, but the main thing is long-term
Yeah,
success,
yeah.
long-term growth.
We actually worked with Kahoot, and we mapped. We had a pilot group in their company, and helped them see some of their culture. Not all of it, of course, but it was really exciting to see how that Kahoot culture was compared to some of the other companies that we worked with. So there is learning here that we can capture, but we just need to get hold of enough of that kind. If you imagine if we can get like 5 startups that are really potentially very successful, we can map out what is a successful startup culture-wise. And then we can start to build a standard and also a development journey. So the systematic of this is really fascinating. And that's why I'm so interested in who makes it over there and what can we possibly learn from them. So this is something that I want to talk to you about more, because it's like I'm convinced this is the way to learn that journey in the best way.
Well, you know, I'm a lifelong learner, and I
Yeah,
think
yeah, I know.
learning is fascinating. One thing I learned as I was gathering academic degrees, the more you learn, the more you realize how little you know.
Oh no.
So you have to learn even more.
Oh,
A lot
that's
of some people think
yeah,
they know it all,
yeah.
and if
They
you're
don't.
smart,
Yeah,
if you are learned, you
yeah.
know how little you know.
Oh,
But that makes
yeah.
the journey so
Yeah,
interesting. You
that's
have to learn more when you're preparing a lecture. When you
yeah.
do that, you say, "Oh man,
Oh
I
man.
need to learn more. I need to know this and this and that." And so to connect the picture, you know, connect the dots.
Yeah.
The learning is a fascinating process, and it's something that everyone in companies need to embrace,
Yeah.
because we live in an environment. It is uncertain, it's complex, constantly changing, and that's the way it is.
It's the way it is. So the way I know you, Eilif, you probably have new projects on your table right now. So, what's the most fascinating thing that you will dig into this year?
Well, as I said, I'm very, since I've been into learning, and the use of technology in learning is something that I have spent the last 30 years uh, uh, looking into and trying to understand. And given what is happening around AI now, I am fascinated by the potential role that these technologies can have. So I suspect that's going to be a bigger part of my attention. Now, I'm still interested in XR, the virtual reality and augmented reality, and Ludenso, which is a the Norwegian company focusing on augmented reality, doing a really good job. I'm very impressed by the leadership of that company and how they're going about building the platform, and they already got a lot of customers working with textbook companies around the world, and using augmentation. You get back to that word again. How do you augment the knowledge? How do you augment the content in a book to make it more interesting, to show the complexities of the human heart, how it functions? If students can see that coming up out of the page, it makes learning a lot more interesting.
Yeah.
And so I will continue to spend time trying to help companies, particularly Nordic companies that have great technology, have great ideas, have great people, and how they can be successful in the American market. That's what I will continue to do. In addition to, I'm still doing work with the Strategic Business Insights, where we focus on future foresight. We work with clients around the world, trying to understand and develop scenarios for the future to better understand what lies ahead.
Yeah.
So that's fascinating.
That's so great. So when can we meet in Norway next time?
Well, we'll see. I had a great time in Norway last summer, and I'll probably be back this summer at some point. So we should meet for coffee and talk about things, and maybe organize a seminar and have discussions. That's how I think that's how things are really interesting, when you get a bunch of different people together and you explore and discuss and look into the future.
And that's exactly what we're going to do. So it's not going to be a coffee, it's going to be a long lunch, and we're going to plan it well. So we're going to welcome our listeners back, but then in real life experience, to talk about especially the augmented, let's think about it as an augmented cultural journey. How would that be?
Okay.
That's so fascinating. And I really want to hear your take on that. So, Eilif, thank you so much. This was wonderful. I love hearing your enthusiasm on all of this. And so I'm so happy we could do it. And we'll definitely repeating it in a while.
Well, thanks for inviting me. It's great to be part of your podcast, and good luck in your work. And I will listen to all your culture podcasts. You do a great job.
That's great. And so thank you so much. We'll see you soon.